Hi everyone, my name is Jordan Baker-Blanc. I am a G-Fit performance coach here in Seattle, and I have a master's degree in sport and performance psychology, and I am a level 2 coach through the Titleist Performance Institute. I got my start coaching over 10 years ago, and I've been involved in the golf fitness space for 5 of those years. And I got my start working with golfers, working as a strength conditioning coach at UC Santa Barbara, where I was put in charge of all the rotational sports, so golf, tennis, water polo, baseball, anything where you are swinging or throwing, that's considered a rotational sport. And during my time there, I really gravitated towards working with golfers just because I found we were really able to move the needle in terms of improving their performance. And since then, I've gone all in on this niche. I teach golf fitness classes here at Google, have continued programming for a handful of golfers who are now playing on the Canadian PGA Tour. And I also make golf fitness videos on the internet. So if you're into that kind of thing. A little bit we're going to talk about today. We've got how golf fitness is going to benefit you specifically. We're going to go over a practical warm-up, some quick and easy things you can do to make sure you're feeling your best before your next tee time. We will touch on some important movement patterns for golfers, so we can kind of hone in on where to focus our efforts in the gym. We'll talk about specific exercises for improving your club head speed, as well as I'm going to teach you how to structure a golf workout so you can do this stuff on your own. And then finally, we'll talk about how to progress that program as we move from off-season to preseason to in-season. And then if you stick around, I'm also going to give everyone a gift as a thank you for listening to me talk today. So that will be at the end there. Cool. So how is this stuff going to benefit you specifically? While distance is the primary outcome that we think of when we think about training for golf, there are other benefits that are arguably even more important. So one being injury prevention. Golf is a relatively brutal sport. The lower back sustains over 1,400 pounds of compressive force during the golf swing. So it makes sense to be training those tissues to build up their tolerance so that we are lowering our likelihood of injury. We also have longevity. We can look at this with two lenses. One, if we're not getting injured, we're going to be able to play the sport that we love later into our lives. And two, there's a relatively depressing fact or statistic, and that is we lose 10% of our strength and 17% of our power on average every decade after 40. So if we implement a well-designed strength conditioning program, we can negate and in certain circumstances even reverse some of that loss of strength and power as we age. And I could talk about this stuff all day, but I thought it would be valuable to listen to one of the best talk about training, so I'll let Rory take it away.
Golf over the last few years has definitely become more of an athletic endeavor. You don't have to look like a football player to play golf, but at the same time there are certain things you need within your body to help you swing the right way. Obviously distance is more important than ever. If you can develop speed and explosiveness, that's a really good thing for your game. So I like to feel springy, explosive. I do a lot of that stuff in the gym, whether it's plyometrics, box jumps.
So Rory talks a lot about explosive training, which is really important for a golf fitness program, but it's also important to note that we should also build a solid foundation of fitness before just trying to mimic exactly what the pros are doing. I have another short clip from Rory. Let's go ahead and listen in.
When I started to work out and take that side of the game a little more seriously, I think one of the things I was lacking at that time and which really helped me get more distance straight away was more stability rather than speed and explosiveness, because I think most people can create a little bit of speed, but I think what happens at impact is, there's a lot of people that aren't stable enough and can't stabilize the right areas of their body to keep that speed going all the way through impact. So, honestly, I would work on, some one leg stuff, trying to get your core a little stronger. It sort of seems boring at the start, but it can make a big difference.
So we heard Rory throw around the word stability a lot there, and it's a really big buzzword in the golf fitness space, but most people really can't define it. We use balance and stability pretty much interchangeably in the English language, and so I figured we would just go ahead and define both those terms. Balance is your ability to stay upright, and stability is your ability to resist unwanted movement when acted upon by an outside force. So, for example, if we have an unstable shoulder, we have excess movement within that joint, which is going to make it really difficult to recreate the same swing over and over and over again. So stable joints are going to help us with the consistency of our golf swing. And then also distance, this is the obvious one, but training our bodies in the gym is going to increase our capacity to produce force, as well as the rate that we can develop that force. So this is going to help us hit the ball further. Some people claim that golf is all about the short game and that distance really doesn't matter. And I'd like to respond to that claim with a quote from our president by saying, that's a bunch of malarkey. I'm not denying the importance of chipping and putting, but as you can see on this graphic, longer drives are correlated with a lower handicap, so in the grand scheme of things, whether you like it or not, distance does matter. And before we get too deep here, I want to address the elephant in the room, and that is a lot of you golfers, I'm looking at you, Stuart, are allergic to the weight room. If I had $1 every time I heard someone say, I don't want to get too bulky, then I definitely wouldn't be driving a 2002 Acura RSX with water sloshing around in my trunk, sitting outside with a flat tire right now. It's a true story. It's for another time, though. I want to assure you that it's not a valid concern. It's a lot like saying, I don't want to read too many books because I might get too smart. It's probably not going to happen. First off, building muscle is really freaking hard. And second, the research all supports the fact that strength training actually results in increases in mobility and not the alternative. So if Hercules up here can do a full split, adding a few pounds of muscle on your frame is not going to inhibit you from getting into a good position in your golf swing. Next, I promised I was going to give you guys a practical warm-up that you can do just to make sure you're feeling your best before your tee time. A lot of my friends like to show up, hit a couple of these, maybe a couple of these, and just let her rip. Nothing wrong with that for some people, but a lot of others will do better with some more structure. So usually what I'll do is two parts. I'll do some mobility at home, focusing on the hips, the T-spine, and the shoulders. And the reason I'll do that at home is because I don't feel great about getting down on the ground, rolling around in the grass before playing around. And then once you get to the course, this can be done either in the parking lot or at the driving range. I'll usually do about 5 minutes of drills just with the golf club, so we can have a look at what that might look like. So like the video said, it doesn't have to be super extensive, but just a few minutes can make a big difference so that you're not using your first few holes as your warm-up. Next, let's talk about some of the most important movement patterns for golf. We'll start off with lower body pulls. This is that hip hinge pattern, and this is especially important for golf because the golf swing is essentially just an explosive hip hinge. So movements like kettlebell swings, deadlifts, hip bridges, all of these are going to have huge carryover because, again, this is exactly the pattern that we're going through in our golf swing. Lower body pushing. This is not as obvious, but we're going to touch on more depth later. But we generate a ton of force through our lead leg in the golf swing right before impact. So movements like squats, lunges, etc. are also going to help contribute to a powerful golf swing. We've got upper body pushing and upper body pulling, and maintaining a strong upper body is just going to allow us to deliver all that power from our lower body ultimately to the golf club. And some of the most active muscles in the golf swing, we have the glutes, which are really the king of the golf swing. We can think of the glutes like the engine that is generating most of the power here. We've got the obliques coming in second, and generally just the muscles of the core. These are responsible, again, for transferring that power. They're the connection between our lower and our upper body. So if we're weak there, then we're going to be leaking power before it makes it to the club head. We've got the lats and the rhomboids. These are the muscles of your back, and they play a particularly important role in generating power in your downswing. We've got the pecs, or the muscles of your chest, and this is the most active upper body muscle directly at impact with the golf ball. Hamstrings work in tandem with the glutes for that explosive hip extension, and an honorable mention is the forearms, which are unique because they are our direct connection to the golf club. So any weakness there can result in injury potentially upstream or downstream at the wrist or elbow. Now on to some of the exciting stuff. These are the 4 ways that we can increase club head speed. We've got rotary power. This is the primary source of power in the golf swing. It's generated in the legs, hips, spine, and shoulders. We've got vertical thrust. I alluded to this one earlier. Not as obvious, but this is the force that's applied to the ground through our lead leg. So if you think back to your high school physics class, to Newton's third law, which is every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Any amount of force that we're putting into the ground is putting an equal force back into our body, which we can then translate into more rotary power. We've got chopping power. This refers to arm strength and the ability to deliver speed down and across the body. And then finally, we have wrist release. This is probably the least significant, but it's still important nonetheless. The wrist can create power in 3 directions. And again, this stems from that forearm strength that we talked about as well. I know that was a lot of information and it's kind of abstract. So let's have a look at all of these elements at play in one of the prettiest golf swings in the game. So we've got Tiger's takeaway, that backswing, creating huge chopping power with the arms, big rotation through the trunk, and then that wrist release and that vertical thrust happening simultaneously right before impact. I know it happens really quickly, so let's look at that one more time. So again, big rotation, big powerful arms, and then again, simultaneously, wrist and that lead leg extending are all going to combine for that power that we are chasing in our swing. Let's look at some specific exercises for how we can develop greater vertical thrust. We've got box jumps here. The height of the box isn't so important. It's more about the intent. So making sure that we are giving as much effort as we can, regardless of the surface. This is a band-assisted squat jump. This is a banded broad jump. And we have a loaded jump. This one's done with a trap bar here. So that one where I'm holding onto the bands and I'm jumping way higher than I otherwise could is using something called overspeed training, which basically we're teaching our nervous system, hey, we're actually capable of moving a lot faster than we usually do. And we can also go on the opposite end of the spectrum there with the loaded jumps. Both of these are equally effective for increasing your vertical jump. And why do we want to increase vertical jump? Because it's actually correlated with greater distance. So that's not to say that if Alicia in the audience here has a 36-inch vert and Stuart has got a 20-inch vert, it doesn't mean that Alicia is automatically going to hit the ball further than Stuart. But what it does mean is that if we could take Alicia's vert from 36 inches to 40 inches, she'd now be hitting the ball further because she can develop force faster than she could before. And she'd also probably be an Olympic high jumper because that is elite. All right, here are some exercises for training rotary power. This is a explosive push-pull variation. This is a med ball shot put. A half-kneeling cable lift. And we have a single leg to double leg hop there. So med ball is one of the most useful tools for training this explosive rotation. You see me using the cable machine as well, but if you don't have access to that equipment, we can recreate all these exercises just by using resistance bands. That way, if you're more comfortable training at home, you're more than welcome to do so. Here are some exercises for training chopping power. This is a med ball half-kneeling chop. This is a recoiled med ball slam. And this one I'll talk about in a little bit more depth. So that last exercise, I'm training deceleration there. And deceleration is actually one of the most underrated athletic qualities for golfers. The reason for that, we can think about an example in the real world. If you had a car that didn't have any brakes on it, you probably wouldn't drive it. And same goes for your golf swing. If we are swinging that club and we can't slow it down, we're going to be putting unnecessary torque on our lower back and setting ourselves up for the potential to get injured. Last one here, we'll have a look at some ways to train wrist release. This is a plyometric push-up. That's a fun one. This is a half-kneeling med ball chest pass. and these are called bench throws. And if some of those exercises look intimidating, don't worry, we can modify any of these to kind of meet the athlete where they are. Those explosive push-ups, for example, they can be performed from an elevated surface, something like a countertop or even up against a wall, and we'll still be able to get some of the benefits, strengthening that wrist and that elbow extension. Cool, last couple things we're gonna talk about here. We have how to structure a golf workout. All 5 of these variables are present in every golf workout that I write. So we'll usually start with some mobility, make sure that the athletes are able to get into the positions for the exercises that we're going to be training that day. We'll do a golf-specific warm-up, so raise the core temperature, get those muscles firing. This is also going to reduce our risk of injury. Then we'll move into our power work. This is going to be the jumping, the throwing, the slamming, all that stuff that was in the videos. And it's important that we do this first when we're fresh, because the whole point of this is that we're moving as fast as possible, and that becomes really difficult to do if we've just been lifting heavy weights and we're already have a lot of residual fatigue. Then we will get into our strength training and our core work. These aren't really set in stone. They can kind of be interchangeable or intermingled. But yeah, this is a general framework for how we'll set up these workouts. And the way that this evolves throughout the year, so how it changes, whether we're in our off season, our preseason, or in season, is that they will all still be present. We'll just kind of change the volumes that they are being utilized in. So during the off season now, this is our chance to really go all in on building muscle and doing high volume strength work. As we get into the preseason, we'll have our focus shift a little bit more to power work, still doing that strength training. And then once we get to that in season, it's going to be a lot of just the power work, much lower volumes for strength training, and then a super heavy emphasis on mobility to make sure that we're not feeling stiff. And the reason for all that low volume training is we don't want to be sore when we're playing our round or in tournaments on the weekends. So I know that was a lot of information. I don't expect you to be able to go and write your own workouts now after I talked for 3 minutes on this slide. So for that reason, what I want to do is I want to give you all a written for you 4-week program just to really lower the barrier to entry. If any of you are interested in starting to do some sort of training for your golf game, I can send this out to you, putting the finishing touches on it. It'll go out on Monday to anyone who's interested. And basically it has 3 workouts throughout the week. You can click on any of these exercises and it'll take you to a video where I demonstrate how to perform it properly, explain how it's going to benefit your golf game, and so on. So hopefully that'll take some of the guesswork out of it for you if you are interested in starting to do some sort of strength training. And yeah, that's my thank you for listening to me talk for the past half hour. If you're interested in connecting, you can find me on all the major social media platforms at Fairway Golf Fitness. And I'll go ahead and open it up for Q&A. Or actually, are we going to Jack? Yeah, Q&A. Open it up for Q&A.